Did you know that at any given time, nearly 300,000 ships are sailing across the oceans? These include oil tankers, LPG and LNG carriers, tugboats, passenger ships, and the vessels that keep the global economy moving, container ships. About 90% of global trade moves through sea routes. According to estimates, between 6,000 and 8,000 container ships are traveling across the oceans at any moment. With the help of the automatic identification system, AICs, they can now be tracked in real time. If you visit websites like Marinette Traffic or Vessel Finder, you'll see the entire ocean covered with tiny moving lights. Each light represents a massive ship carrying goods worth millions of dollars. Most of these container ships leave China and travel toward Europe and America. On average, each vessel carries around 5,000 containers. That means nearly 40 million containers are moving across the oceans at any given time. From our clothes to our mobile phones, almost everything once traveled inside these containers before reaching us. On the surface, everything looks normal. Goods arrive from one side, and empty containers return from the other. But the reality is far more surprising and troubling. The balance of global trade is completely distorted. China sells so much to the world that waves of fully loaded containers leave its ports. In 2023 alone, China's trade surplus exceeded $823 billion. That year, China exported goods worth $3.38 trillion and imported goods worth $2.557 trillion, leaving a surplus of $823 billion. The problem begins when these containers reach America and Europe. While China has a surplus of $823 billion, Europe's combined surplus is only around $41 billion, 95% less. But when those same containers arrive in the United States, the imbalance becomes even more extreme. America is the world's largest consumer market. It imports far more than it exports. This means many containers arrive full, but there isn't enough American goods to fill them on the way back. Only about 40% of containers leaving U.S. ports return full. So where do the other 60% go? You might think they simply go back empty. But that's not what happens. Many of these containers are left sitting in junkyards across America. Why? Because sending an empty container back to China costs around $3,000. And that empty box takes up space on a ship that could instead carry a container filled with goods worth millions of dollars. Meanwhile, China can manufacture a brand new container for around $2,000, so there's no need to buy used ones for $3,000 shipping cost. Every year, around 2.5 million new containers are produced, and there is no shortage of old ones either. So what happens to the empty containers stuck in the US and Europe? Many are sold cheaply for storage or construction use. Today, houses and offices are even built from shipping containers, and when they are no longer usable, they are melted down for steel. Each container contains about 2 tons of steel. The next time you pass by a port and see stacks of steel containers piled on top of each other, remember, that's not just scrap metal. It's a story about the imbalance of the global economy. Now let's move to the question that confuses even experts. If America is the world's largest oil producer, why can't it rely only on its own oil? Looking at the global map, the United States currently ranks #1 in oil production ahead of Saudi Arabia and Russia. But surprisingly, it is also the world's second largest oil importer. In simple terms, America sells its own oil and buys oil from others for domestic use. There are 3 major reasons behind this. The first reason is the chemistry of oil. Not all oil is the same. The oil produced in the United States is mostly light crude oil. It is thinner and less dense. However, many American refineries were built decades ago to process heavy crude oil. These refineries were designed at a time when the U.S. imported heavy oil from Mexico and Venezuela. If America wants to modify its refineries to process light crude efficiently, it would cost more than $200 billion instead of spending that money. The U.S. exports its light oil at higher prices and imports cheaper heavy crude oil. The second reason is logistics. Oil in America is produced in one region, while refineries are often located far away. For example, Texas has massive oil production, but there are limited pipelines to move that oil to the East Coast or places like New York. California is almost like an oil island. Due to limited pipeline connections, about 70% of its oil is imported from foreign countries. But even these two reasons are not the full story. The final factor is the Jones Act during World War I. The U.S. faced a serious problem. It did not have enough ships to transport soldiers and equipment overseas. Although it relied on foreign ships temporarily, there was a fear. What if those same countries became enemies in the future? To solve this, a law was passed requiring that goods transported between American ports must be carried on ships that are built in America, owned by Americans, and crewed by Americans. However, building ships in the U.S. costs about 3 times more than building them in China. American crews also earn higher salaries. As a result, transporting oil from Texas to New York by sea can add about $5 per barrel in cost. Sometimes importing oil from abroad becomes cheaper than transporting domestic oil within the country. A law that was created to protect America has gradually become an economic burden. These are the unusual reasons why the world's largest oil producer still depends on others. Now let's turn to Iran. For years, the United States has imposed heavy sanctions on Iran. Because of these sanctions, Iran cannot buy or sell goods directly with America or its allies. Yet Iran's Mahan Air operates American and European aircraft. So how did Iran manage to smuggle Boeing 777 planes? In 2024, Fay 25, the world was surprised when 5 Boeing 777 aircraft suddenly appeared in Iran. This was the result of years of planning. In Alice Springs, Australia, there is a large aircraft storage site. 5 old but usable Singapore Airlines Boeing 777s were parked there. Iran could not buy them directly. Instead, they were purchased through a US-based company. The planes were then moved to China and later sold to a company in Madagascar that existed only on paper. They were then moved to Cambodia, where aviation rules are less strict. In July 2025, the planes filed a flight plan from Cambodia to Kenya, claiming they were going for maintenance. However, once they entered Afghan airspace, where monitoring was weak, they switched off their transponders and disappeared from radar. Instead of flying to Kenya, they changed course and landed in Iranian cities such as Chabahar, Zahid, and Mashhad. By the time the world understood what had happened, the 5 Boeing 777 aircraft had already become part of Iran's Mahan Air fleet. Today, Mahan Air operates around 50 to 60 active aircraft, mostly Airbus, along with several Boeing planes. Under international aviation law, unless countries are officially at war, civilian aircraft cannot easily be denied access to airspace. However, because of sanctions, many countries refuse to refuel Iranian planes. If European or US-aligned countries completely close their airspace to Iranian airlines, Iran could respond by closing its own airspace, which would significantly impact flights between the Middle East and Europe. This is the complex reality behind global trade, oil politics, and aviation sanctions, a world where things are rarely as simple as they appear. In today's world, power is not just about producing more, it's about controlling systems, oil, trade routes, airspace, everything is connected. And sometimes what looks like weakness is actually strategy. To Fay improve retention in the middle around the oil section, add a curiosity line like, but here's the shocking part. Sometimes importing oil is actually cheaper than using your own.